Well, hello everyone. Welcome to Chirpin Time. I am your host, Davis Shoulders. This is a exciting venture from our Little Birds team, where we interview authors who we are thrilled to have their book coming out this fall. Today, our special guest is Judy Sandler for her memoir, What Kind of Mother, which appears in the world September 8th of this year. And so we're so from West Virginia University Press, nonetheless. So we're really so excited to have Judy here to talk about this great book. So just to get us started, Judy, just let us know a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I'm Judy Sandler. I live in Lincolnville, Maine now, although I grew up in Baltimore, Maryland. Was a native of Baltimore and raised three children there with my husband. I was a educator in independent schools in Baltimore for over 28 years, which had a big effect on everything in my life, actually. And then I decided to stop teaching about 6, 7 years ago and start writing full time. And that's when I went to get my MFA and focused on writing What Kind of Mother.
That's amazing. So as we get into this memoir, we your background in Baltimore, you're growing up in Baltimore, sort of takes a big setting, and your relationship with your dad, which I have to say, sort of as we crack into it, there's so many layers of that, and that generational understanding is such an important self-reflexive thing that you do. So one of the things I want to talk about from that time period that became a theme that I witnessed in your book is this notion of silence, right? Of, your dad taking on a silence that maybe at times in your perspective became oppressive, right? And you see how that translated to the way that you interact with your son. But the silence can mean a lot of things, right? It can be calming, it can be stillness. But in this one, it's kind of like, why are we ignoring this thing standing in the room with us? So as a way to kind of talk about what this book about, right? And you breaking the silence, so to speak, what is that type of silence that you wanna shout about here with this book?
So yeah, I grew up in Mount Washington in Baltimore. I was uh, a privileged person. I attended independent schools. My parents were gave us everything and more, but I also grew up in a household where you don't quit anything and you tutors are hired if you start to veer off into getting C's in anything quickly. And it was a pretty structured, silent house, although not quiet, just silent around things like when there were issues, certainly mental illness. Like all families, members of my family suffered from anxiety and OCD, but no one's taken to a psychologist. Like we're good. Stop watching television and you'll be good. And that's kind of the premise of my immediate family. And I do think that when women become mothers, that's what you go on, right? Like you know what you were raised at, like you know how to raise your children pretty much based on how you were raised. Yes, there are women wiser than I am who are like, yeah, I'm not doing that. But I did. And in the book, I think I take a close look at how I was raised and then how I did pass that on to at least this first child in terms of expectations, high expectations, cultural expectations, and sort of the silence that goes along with you're fine. Just keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going.
Yeah, the keep it going is
Keep
your
going.
phrase that you brought from your.
My dad's
So
mom.
I'm realizing that we may need to do a brief sort of overview of sort of just the experience of this memoir, right? Because um, you write it in this journalistic way in which you reflect on the household you were raised in and how that's affected your son's mental illness. But
Hmm.
specifically, there's two factors you're dealing with. You're dealing with substance use disorder and also some mental illness. Just for the sake of the interview, just share a little bit about what just the brief version of what you experienced with your son in this book.
Yeah, I mean, just in a nutshell, he was great until he wasn't. There was people say, "Well, you must have seen it coming." No, I didn't see it coming. He's really smart. He was a athletic, interesting, and interested little boy. Did he have tantrums? Yeah, he had tantrums, normal childhood things. And as a high school kid, he was a very good athlete. He wound up hanging out with kids older than he was, making varsity teams early. And uh he, smoked too much weed. Okay. Is that an addict? No, right? Like, should we have watched, were there red flags? Maybe that we didn't see, maybe. Then it really wasn't until college when he called us from Colorado College, which is in the book, and said, "I'm in trouble. Like I'm addicted. I can't stop. I need help." And we were and remain close with all our kids, and this one is no exception. And so I'm actually proud of the fact that he felt like he could call us and say that. And we flew out to get him. He spent time at a wilderness therapy program when he was about 20, which was great. I feel like it saved his life. And then the diagnosis became, then he came back, he graduated college. He was working as a recreational therapist, which is what he majored in. And he called one day and told me that he remembers a time when he killed someone in high school, and it was in a drunk driving accident. And I was on my way to work. I was like, "What are you talking about? Like, this never happened." And then I was like, "Did it happen?" um, but it didn't. And he's like, "Yeah, I remember this, and I think you and dad should, make amends, and I'm calling to make amends, and I'm willing to do whatever I have to do." And at that point, he was delusional, and he spent some time in a psych unit up here in Maine, and was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And so it was became a dual diagnosis at that point. He was medicated, stabilized, and then a couple years later got involved with a group that was very anti-pharmaceutical, and he decided to stop taking the meds. And so a lot of the book is about, and this is not an uncommon thing. Medications have side effects. It's not fun. Lots of psychiatric meds. It's not really a science. I've been told that it's an art to medicate someone on psychopharmaceuticals. So he spent a long time off medication as someone who needs to be on medication. So a lot of the book is about that time.
Well, and I just have to, witness that, bring to bear that, as a mother, you're experiencing one of the worst nightmares, right? Of your ability and your interest and your financial stability to support someone, right? To go through all the ringer and for nothing that you do to seem
Right.
to have an impact or so, you know,
Well,
so
you learn quickly what the word boundary means.
yeah.
Because I would say that up until this experience, I really, I had no boundaries with my kids. Like, nothing was too much. Nothing. And I know well, I guess it was not you, but with someone from Little Birds, I spoke about the book, The Giving Tree, and
Yes.
how I really dislike that book because there is a point at which you realize you're not in control of this. There's nothing you can do. Nothing, nothing, nothing. Particularly as an adult. Like maybe when the child is 10, 11, 12, 15, 16, 18, 25 years old, nothing. You can try, but there's very little you can do to help.
Well, and I think what people will see, and maybe other mothers, parents, caregivers who have been through this situation, is how much you self-investigate, right? The level of inquiry that you've done to try to, you can give all you want, right? But what is the outcome? And so I think that kind of leads into one of the questions that I had for you is that so, we've mentioned that this is your story, right? This is not, your son has a different story,
Mhm.
but also that the witness of just the role that you play is so sort of freeing on the page, right? For you to be able to express, this is how I interacted with an impossible problem. So speaking to that point of boundaries and just everything, all the things that you plates that you tried to keep spinning, how does it feel sort of as a mother, as an act of mothering, to have to give and give, like like the what is your alternate story of this giving tree, when you think about sort of the energy that you've spent, and that you mentioned sometimes you had boundaryless love, how has that energy that you've given to help someone sort of rested in your body now? You know what I'm saying?
I do. It's a hard question, but I'll try. Again, this goes back to the question that I'm getting a lot, or the comment that, oh, this is very brave of you to put this on the page, to put this out there. But I don't see this as if you were a mother, Davis, or a father, or a person raising a child that belongs to you, that came from you in general, there is nothing that you won't do. And that's how I felt. And that is still how I feel. But I think the title really it's almost a rhetorical question, because I don't see myself as any other kind of mother than anyone else. What kind of mother? Same as you, same as anyone. I was fortunate in that I was able to help him financially in ways many people can't, because of our healthcare system and our mental health system, which is abhorrent. But in terms of emotional support, you give what you can until you realize, like, I'm not giving to support a drug habit. I'm not doing that. Had to stop there. I'm not, and we did draw a line when he decided that he wasn't going to stay on medication.
It's something that you've been able to distill in the form of writing, but
Mm.
as we begin to talk about it, and bravery keeps coming around, right? Like, because we've used that adjective and we've tried to understand it. But as you sort of like peel back the can of worms that this is, no one is immune to, like you're saying, what kind of mother, any other mother, no one is immune to having to deal with, like every time you had to make an ultimatum in the book, I was like, oh, I feel it. Because
It's
you're worried about the perception, right,
right.
of what it means to be a mother, right? And not imagining, he's worried about his own sense of freedom and agency, and wanting to reckon and to name and label what he's reckoning with. But I do think it's interesting to that point that because we have such a hard healthcare system and an ungracious culture, right, to deal with, you mentioned at one point in time, it's maybe he was born in the wrong century and he would have been a priest or a
Right,
shaman, or,
right. It's true, right?
that,
The people that saw visions were really put on altars. I mean,
yeah.
yeah.
I feel like it requires this experimental survival method, you know? right? So there's some experiments that you allow and some that you can't, right?
Right.
And you've had all of this relationship, with your son. And so part of that brings me to this question. You use this notion of the stain, right?
Right.
Stain that
Right.
came from your family and that and it's like I feel your issues as much as I feel his, right? Which is it's the point of the book. But you know what I want you to understand that comes across very clearly. And I mean, I think we're asking this big question: how do we fix this? How do we fix life?
Mm.
You know? And so I'm just wondering if your concept of what counts as fixable or as perfect or as clean, right? You're trying to clean it out every time you use that metaphor of the stain. How has that changed in sort of being bowled over by um, trying to love your son in all of the ways that
Yeah.
you want to?
So, my dad was a writer, but he never wrote about his family ever. He always wrote more historical things. He wrote about buildings in Baltimore. He did write about people, wrote about a lot of people, but never anyone he really knew. He actually avoided that, I would say.
Yeah.
He was a great journalist, people that he didn't know. And now that I think about it, I do think it's because it's really messy to write about your family, really
Mhm.
messy. Any memoirist will tell you that. And there's consequences, and the kind of family I grew up in particular, said, don't do this. Don't write about your family. And I think that in grad school, I read this author named T. Kara Madden, and she said, don't use writing as therapy. It's not Kleenex. It's you need a therapist, go get a therapist. But create enough distance between you and what happened and your words so that you can explain it believably, fairly, and in a way that the reader can like latch onto. And I do believe that. Like there's things I wrote at first, like you wouldn't want to read. Very angry, very one-sided. It takes a long time, I think, to get distance between you and an experience, right? When something just happens to you and you're like, oh my God, let me tell you what just happened. And you experience it in one way. And if you give it 2 weeks and you think back on it, you're like, well, okay, right? Maybe I'll live. Maybe it's not going to be, the death of me. I think that it takes time, less bravery than maybe craft of writing, to learn how to do this. I like to think of it like that. Like good writing can take you far places.
Yeah, you
um,
can you can
with a
see
reader.
yourself. You can see yourself growing in the text,
Right,
right?
right,
Like
right. In a way
we get
that
to
my
witness that
journals
along
would
with you.
not. Would, yeah. Journal writing is one thing, and book writing is very different. It's
Well, and you talk about like the emotions of it all in there. There's moments where you're just angry, especially at the end at this facility, and
yes.
I think there's a catharsis that we witness by seeing your emotion, right? That you've expressed, but you've diluted this. You've spent 30 years, with this person, and that's why I think the self-referential part is so important because we don't know when we're going to have to go on one of these journeys, right? And
That's the what kind of mother. You are that kind of mother. Anyone,
yeah,
anyone. And it is my belief, back to your question, that the cure for it is story, not necessarily writing, but sharing stories. The cure for this is sharing stories. And I'm writing something right now, an essay for this magazine called Provoked magazine, and it's ideally the target audience is women over 50. And it's about how when you're asked the question, how are the kids? You're like, oh, fine, everyone's great. It's great. Kids are great. This one's doing this and this, but no, how are the kids? You're lying, right? So women over 50 have learned really how to just flatten that answer, and no one answers
Well,
it.
and that scene in the book on the porch is
Right.
incredible, where you plan and you prep.
Because I know it's
Clearly,
coming. Know it's
someone
coming.
who has been prepared with anxiety thinking. Uh, you you
Here it
you you
comes.
you have it all built up, only to be met with someone sort of keeping the status quo, right? Not breaking
Right,
the silence,
right. And the
right?
answer to your question is, how do you get rid of it? The stain that my father rubbed into me is by talking honestly with people. I needed her to say, oh, you know what? My kid, one of my kids, blah, 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 because surely, right? Surely one of them has issues with something.
Yeah. No, and I feel that in when we're talking about sort of the role of the book as an opening doors sort of for like I don't want to suggest it too heavily, but it's almost as if this is the next thing that you need to do for the if you've done everything for your son, right? If you've experienced this anger, if you've talked about it, you talk about how you poured yourself into being an educator and helping other people, right? um it's there is this sort of sense of achievement in that, like, you've bubbled over so much that there's nothing left but to tell your story in a way, and that will be the start of this entire other journey. But I think it's interesting how much, especially around the issues of mental illness, neurodivergence, and substance use. I mean, all you just cover a whole bag of things that people don't want to touch,
Right.
you
No, no.
know? And
And yet,
so,
in every family, you show me a family that doesn't have a, a blanket of silence over something. Show me that family. I
we
always used
there
to tell my kids, everyone has something. They're like, my friends, no one has anxiety. No one has, I'm like, you're wrong. Everyone has something. Everyone has something.
everyone has something and no one's talking about it.
Right.
That
And it
is
doesn't help. It doesn't, it just,
yeah.
that's not how we're gonna move forward with help for
Yeah.
parents in particular. I'm not saying it's gonna cure mental illness. That's a whole other, issue. But would it help to share stories with parents? Yeah, this would
Yeah.
help a lot.
And sometimes you need to scream on a boat.
Right.
Right?
You're on the middle of the
Right.
lake and scream. That's
Scream
right.
it on the lake. So I think that it's so interesting because you've been on this long journey, but what it feels like what you're doing is, like I said, is opening up a new one, right? To ask people to join you in addressing and being vocal, right? As an everyday person, right? Because
Mhm.
with your phrase, I was going to say in my family, it was like, well, in the church culture I grew up, it was like everyone's got their stuff. Everyone's family's
Got
got
their stuff.
stuff.
Right. Everyone's
Stuff
got
was the anonymous Southern way of just saying, you can't say it, but it's stuff.
Mhm.
And so, like, bringing things to the foreground of stuff. So I guess, like, maybe we're just covering around the same question, but is there a particular type of visibility that you're trying to bring about this stuff? You know? Yeah.
Yeah, I
Um,
just want everyone to lean over right now and whisper in your friend's ear, like, what's your stuff?
yeah.
And then your friend could feel free to whisper back in your ear, oh, wow, this is my stuff. This is what's going
Yeah.
on. And we would have a conversation about that. And then we wouldn't all feel so damn weird about what's about life. It's not unusual. If if everyone is telling me this is 1 in 4 families, where is it? I don't see it. It's not my world. I'm not seeing it, but I know it's there.
Yeah. Sounds like some radical empathy and group therapy
Mhm.
is in order.
I I don't really want to come across as someone who is not spiritual in any way or doesn't believe in spirituality or and it has nothing to do with religion or anything like that. Yes, do I believe that meditation will help you no matter what's wrong with you? Of course, 100%. Or float tanks, go for it. Or diet, everything. I'm insane about those things. What I've lived through with severe mental illness puts it on par with any physical illness. So I have come to believe that it's a brain disorder and that our like the medical world isn't where we are with cancer or diabetes or, you know, I'm pretty sure we're going to come to a point where we can do a brain x-ray and say, oh, there it is. It's schizophrenia. And here's 15 milligrams of this drug. Because that's where we are with other diseases. And we're not there with, we are still on a, I'm going to ask you 10 questions and then diagnose this as bipolar type something. And that's a kind of a spectrum diagnosis. And in my opinion, I'm not a doctor. I just have lived it. And it's not, it doesn't feel adequate. And I totally understand why parents don't want to medicate their children for these diagnostic labels. However, I have to say, I have also lived through a child not being on medication, and that is not functional. Like, it's a not functioning situation. And on medication, he's highly functional.
Yeah, and I catch you saying in the book holistic or integrative approaches, which means to incorporate science
A
in
hundred
it.
percent.
Oh,
I am all for it. All of
and
it.
it's
One
interesting.
probably won't work without the other. Like I do
Exactly.
that.
That's
Yes.
and I just think it's an interesting journey that you've offered ourselves because in the in the beginning of the narrative, again and all that you describe about yourself and your personality, um, there's no indication that you are negative towards spirituality or towards creative, with the wilderness therapy program and all
Right.
of these things. So I think there is you've just provided a lot of hard questions for us as a society to try to answer. And I think if anything, this is your 95 thesis. This is you're saying like pay
Yeah.
attention to this. It is not a simple.
It's not.
You get a diagnosis and you're good.
And there's
Um,
lots of books out right now. And I am not a denier of anyone's story. Like can't remember the woman's name. It's called May Cause Side Effects, and she comes off um antidepressants after, 25 years. I'm not denying that happened to her. Like, yeah, tell your story. That's all I'm saying. Tell your story. This is mine. This is
yeah,
um she was on pharmaceuticals. She needed to come off. This happened to her when she came off. And that's all she was saying too, really. She's got a forward in there that says, "Hey, I'm not a doctor. This is my story."
yeah. You clearly have had the experience to speak on this.
We're getting
So,
through it. Yeah.
and I think experience, especially with things so personal, goes a long way, right?
I agree.
We get to witness when we get to witness you're struggling with it. It does things in every reader's experience that even without having the final answers, is to say we're going to keep asking the questions.
Right, right. I think that's true. That's
So yeah, I want to we've talked it, but the title of your book, I mean,
Mhm.
so wise, and the details and the mantra of it throughout, that you asked yourself, what kind of mother are you? So I just want to hold a moment for you to kind of reflect, what kind of mother are you? And what does that mean for the world? What kind of mother can we be? What kind of mothers can we be?
I'm not a mother that is that different from any other mother who has a child who has experienced severe mental illness. Millions of women and families and men go through this. I am wiser for having gone through it. I feel like I had a story to tell, and I am a mother who has the ability to write, and so I could write it clearly for you. I'm a mother who has learned what boundary means
Mm.
and didn't know it before. Definitely didn't know it before.
It feels like in a subtle way what you're doing by titling it this book and asking your question over and over is you're allowing yourself to redefine motherhood and allowing others to as well.
Yeah,
You know,
that's a good way to put it. Like, what kind of mother will you be after having gone through something like this?
mm,
And what kind of mother can you be to help other mothers who are willing to listen and share their stories? And yeah, what kind of mother can you be that to put yourself out there and say, yeah, this happened, and I'll tell you what happened.
mm, yes. Well, you've done a beautiful job.
Thank you, David.
And it's made me think a lot about sort of just the labor of love, period. Just the labor that is loving someone. And it brought up to mind specific individuals in my life and the way people are to me and the way, the way we are to each other. So,
Good.
um, now our final fun question that
Got
we
it.
get to ask,
Got it.
that you said you already had an answer to. So,
I
as since we
know.
are birds, if your book was a bird, what type of bird would it be?
So if my book were a bird, it's going to be a hummingbird. First, because of the way it's written, which is by design in very short, sort of soundbitey chapters. Wanted it not to be written chronologically because it's not how I remember it. And I didn't want it does start off with a scene from my son's birth, but then kind of flashes back and forth. There's a path like hummingbirds have, but they come back, they keep coming back and keep coming back. And that's one reason that it would be a hummingbird. And also because I myself have pretty bad ADHD. And so the way I write is like I'm really focused in the morning. But when I say really focused, I mean like 3 hours. That's good. And then I get 3 hours done. And then I got to go move and do something. And then I can come back and write some more or do something having to do with writing. So the way that I work is also hummingbird like.
There you go.
There
The
you go.
buzzing movement, constant returning
Right.
process of the
Mhm.
text. It's
Mhm.
beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Judy, for
Thank
coming here.
you. They were
Uh,
good, thoughtful questions.
so if you're excited about Judy's book, it will be available. Again, What Kind of Mother is available September 8th of 2026, wherever books are sold. And so I hope you enjoyed this conversation and you got to know Judy a little better, and I hope that you'll be really interested in picking up that book. So anyway, thank you all for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
Little birds, you plant the seed, we spread the word. Take the truth you speak far across the land. Little birds, if you ain't got time to chirp, take your dreams, give them wings to make them soar across the sky. Oh, little birds, oh, little birds, ba-ba-da-ba-ba, little bird, ba-ba-da-ba-ba-ba, little bird. little birds, little birds, little birds, we spread the word.